In this video, we are going to see how to use expressions with JSX. We already saw that this thing is called JSX, but essentially this thing is just an expression. So what is this parents around it? Just for clarity. So for example, if we have some const x is equal to 1 plus 2, we could very well wrap 1 plus 2 in parents, so that is fine, right? This 1 plus 2 is an expression. Similarly, this JSX is an expression, so if we want to remove this parents, that is also fine, which means that we can write something like this also, and it will work same. However, just for clarity, generally we use parents. In fact, if you want, we can assign it to a variable also. So let's say I don't know, let's name it JSX only. So let's say const this variable JSX is equal to this thing, and just given some indentation for clarity, and it is still the same, you can understand. In fact, you can use parents here also for just the sake of clarity, and give proper indentation so that it looks like HTML better, and it is fine. So all this can be done, but we will use this only when it is needed, and we will just now see that when that can be useful. But right now, just take this whole expression, and instead of creating a variable, just use it directly. But just wanted to show you that the whole JSX is just an expression. Okay, so let's now focus on how to use expressions in JSX. Before we do that, one more thing I wanted to show you, that this thing we already mentioned that this thing is a component, and we will go deep about component in the next video. But right now, just wanted to show you that, and just wanted to tell you that this thing is a component, app thing is a component, and it returns some JSX. The whole idea of a component is that it should return a JSX. Now this thing which we are returning, actually this thing you can return only one. This thing is basically called JSX element. Only one JSX element can be returned from a component. Okay, which means that you cannot do something like this. So let's say again you create some other elements like span, and inside that you write hello. Now you can see that this syntax error is sort of thing is coming, because you cannot directly add at the root level, because right now you can see that this whole thing is not one element, right? One element means that root node should be only one root node, right? But here there is no one root node, right? So either this is not allowed like this, but if you definitely want that thing, then you can have something like this. Let's wrap the whole thing inside some other div. So let's do something like this, and add everything inside. Okay, and then you can see that both of them will be rendered, and in the HTML, actual HTML, you can see that this thing is there. But what if we don't want that? What if we don't want that? We just we can see that this thing is now inside div, but in pure HTML, directly inside root, these two multiple children are allowed, right? In fact, here also you can see that here also multiple children are allowed. I can have something like this, right? The only restriction is that at the root level you should not have multiple children. But what if I want that? If that is a requirement, then there is something called fragments in React. Okay, so what you can do is that instead of div, if you use something called fragment, and you can see that automatically from React this fragment is imported. If you import this, and now you see the render, then obviously everything is same. Just let's remove this just for now, for simplicity. Now you can see that this div is there, and then another at the root level we wanted to have another element, span. Now instead of div, if you use fragment, then this fragment thing will be invisible, which means that this element will not come directly at the root level. Only these two things will come, right? You can see that in the HTML also. that now you can see that directly here inside root, this thing and this thing is coming, that fragment thing is invisible now, right? So that is sometimes required when from a component you want to return multiple elements just at the root level, but actually you don't want to show the wrapped element, right? But uh, but sometimes it is useful. Okay, so here instead of fragment, actually there is one another way also. Instead, in so this is like named import, right? Instead you can also have the default import, let's say called react, and then you can use react.fragment, and here also react.fragment. So this both are same, both will work fine. So you can see that this is also working. However, a better version of this is used, where a new syntactic sugar for this is now available, where inside React, rather than writing this react.fragment, if you don't write anything at all, which means that this sort of syntax is supported in React, that where you just put empty tag sort of this thing, then this is also fragment only. So now nothing is imported, so this thing is not needed. But now you can see that this thing also works fine. So now you have, this is also essentially just a fragment, just a shortcut for that. So now you know that how to use that sort of thing, right? Like fragments. Okay, coming back to what we wanted to discuss here, we wanted to discuss that what if we want to use some expressions inside JSX, which means that right now obviously only hello world is printed, but let's say here I want to add some expression, right? So let's say 5. Okay, then you can see that this 5 is coming here, right? Now you might be thinking that what is the need of this? I could have directly written 5 here, right? So not a big deal, right? This is also same. But what earlier syntax was there, now if you put curly braces inside JSX, then inside this curly braces any expression can be written, which means that now I can even write 5 plus 10 and it will become 15, which means that inside curly braces any expression can be written, and then that expression can be evaluated to whatever I want. Okay, and it can be any valid JavaScript expression. Okay, anything you can write. So you can write like 2 raised to the power 5 or something, and it will work fine. 32. Okay, and you can have any other thing also. So for example, I can just get rid of this world altogether, and instead I will use a variable. Variable means some expression. So here I will use, let's say, world as a string, and a string is also an expression. One just eventually this thing is just a valid JavaScript expression, and that's why this will also work. But now it is a valid JavaScript expression. So if you write something like XYZ or something, then we know that this thing will be concatenated, because plus is the syntax for concatenation, right? And then you can see that this is concatenated. So this also works fine. However, full-fledged expressions, anything can be used. So for example, I want that let's say if some variable, let's say const x is there, and x is equal to, let's say, 10 or let's say 5, and if I say that if x is less than 10, then print hello, otherwise print, let's say, there, then we can see that I am printing hello world, because I am having x, the x value is 5 and 5 is less than 10. However, if this is, let's say, 15 and I save it, then you can see that this becomes hello there. So you can understand now completely that inside curly braces any JavaScript expression can be put. Okay, so that is one thing. Secondly, let's keep here hello world for now, and let's have some expression like anything, any JavaScript expression. So let's say 2 raised to the power 3, it should be 8, right? Now you can see that this thing hello world 8 is coming, right? And this is fine. And why there is some line break? Because we know that this thing is p tag, right? If p tag is there, then what do we know? We know that there will be some gap, so that is why it is there. But let's say let's say this thing is not a expression, mathematical expression, or some string or something. Rather, it's again an expression, but we just now understood that JSX itself is an expression, which means that I can write something like this also, isn't it? We just now mentioned that here inside curly braces any expression can be there, and JSX is itself an expression. That's why I can write something like this also, and it will work also fine. Just wanted to show you, because otherwise there's no need, right? You could directly write this inside here also, because this is a special case, right? Because this thing will be valid inside curly braces also, and outside also. Outside because it is a JSX, and inside because it is also an expression, and any expression can be written inside curly braces. But just wanted to show you that both are valid. Okay, now another thing which I wanted to show you, that yeah, this thing was working fine. Obviously it is not needed, but again, like the whole thing initially I assigned in a variable and then returned that, you can write now something like this also. So let's say some I don't know, greet is equal to hello, right? And then I can take this variable, and now this variable I can put, because any expression can be put in curly braces, right? And you can understand that this thing is also working exactly fine. Now apart from this, what I can do is that for the time being I can, let's say obviously I know that I can definitely have something like this, but inside this let's have an expression something like name. Okay, and that name, let's define it. Name is equal to, let's say, Alex, and then now we can see that hello world and hello Alex is printed. We already know that this thing will work because inside curly braces any expression is allowed. And we also know that if, let's say, if something like this is there, that yeah, um, so earlier we had a variable called x, right? So let's have any variable called z, and this is 5. Okay, and then again we can have something like z is less than 10, then let's say put Alex, right? Or otherwise let's say put Bob, and we know that this thing will work, and this will have Alex because z is less than 10. Now you can take the whole thing, right, and instead you can simply use name here and use that condition here also, right? So that should be also fine. At the same time, you could also do something like you can have a proper function. So for example, rather than having this, let's say that I create another let's say, so let's use this variable only, greet, and inside this I am using this JSX hello name. Okay, and then instead of this I could use greet also. Okay, so the same thing, like hello Alex is there, and if I change it to 15, then hello Bob is there. So it's working fine, right? At the same time, this thing can be any expression, which means that you can also have something like this. So let's say this thing is, rather than this is a function, right? Then I can have greet as a proper function which returns this thing, and this thing will also work fine, you can see, right? And since this is a function, you can very well write arrow function also, which means that something like this is also fine. So you can see that, let's say this thing is there, so it is also working fine, right? I change it to 5 and it's back to Alex. So we can clearly see that this thing is happening. Now what if this logic, whatever we are writing here, that is moved inside this function only? So yeah, I can convert that logic by just let's say write something like this. I would rather return it, but move that whole logic, let's say I don't know, inside here. Yeah, so yeah, that will also work, right? Now yeah, this thing is working, but what if this ternary expression is also changed to some, let's say, if else condition, which means that I can also do something like this, that if this expression which we were having, this thing, then let's say if this thing is there, then and let's say now I'm properly writing the whole thing, so which means that if this thing is there, then return, let's say, hello, sorry, hello Alex, and otherwise we can return something like hello Bob, right? So the same thing, but just I'm trying to show you that it doesn't matter, since JSX is an expression, you can play around it in any way like any other expressions, right? So this thing will also work fine. So you can see that this thing is perfectly working, right? Now one more thing, what if your requirement is that yeah, my requirement is that if it is less than 10, then yeah, just return this, otherwise actually I don't want to print anything, understand? If it is less than, so let's say it's 5, right? Then I want to print hello Alex, right? But if it is 15, it is greater than 10, then in else part I don't want to return hello Bob, I just want to not add anything at all in the DOM. Okay, if that is the requirement, then there is a special thing that if you return null, then so anywhere where JSX is being used, and instead of JSX you are using null at that place, then that thing will be not rendered at all. So you can see that it is not rendered. In fact, in inside a DOM also you can see that only hello world is there, that whole thing, the other thing is actually completely gone. And again, only when it is less than 10, then only it is appearing. So you can see that it has appeared back, but it is completely gone if you return null. Okay, so that should be all for this video. In the next video we are going to see something somewhat more about components. We already know that this app thing is a component, but what actually is a component and why to create components, that we are going to see in the next one.